Hello. So we're going to be making the Fleur hat, and this is the first one I made right here. And so here's the Fleur stitch in here. It's quite a beautiful stitch. And we'll be making the E-wrap in 2 brim with it. I really like it with these particular kind of stitches because this E-wrap in 2 stitches also part of what's in here, so they just sort of blend really nice together. And we'll make this kind of a bind off because it's thinner, and so it looks quite a bit nicer whether you're going to have a beanie or wear it with a slight slouch, or however you're going to wear this hat. So that's what we're going to make. So I'm going to use this loom, 36 peg 3/4 inch Cindy wood loom, and the yarn that we're going to use here is the same type of yarn that I used in the one I just showed you, but a different color, and this is James C. Brett yarn. There's a bit of green at the beginning, but it turns to another color from where I looked at it, but I'll make sure, because the loom is a green, that I will keep it quite close up so you'll be able to easily see what I'm doing. And so the first thing we're going to do is just cast on, and we're just going to do a slip knot and put it on the work here. There we go. And we're going to do a chain cast on, which is a really nice cast on for hats. So we just go, I'll do this slowly, we just go inside the loop, scoop up the working yarn just like we're doing a pearl or something like that, and snug it up a little bit, and then we can put down our loom hook, because we're going to just do this with our fingers, and we just take this loop, put it behind peg 1, or sorry, peg 2, that's peg 1, the next peg, and then put the working yarn through and just give it a tug to tighten it. And I'm just going to take this, because I have the Cindy wood loom, and wrap it in there to secure it. And then we just go behind the next peg, pull the working yarn through and secure it. Pull it through and snug it up. Behind, pull it through and snug it up. And then I always like to check to make sure my tension is good, and that's looking good. We want it tight, but we want to be able to lift the yarn over. So that looks good to me. And then we just keep going. Loop over the next peg and snug it up. Next, and snug it up. Okay, and over the next peg and snug it up. Okay, and we're just going to do that all the way around the loom, and when we get back to just before peg 1, we'll meet up and I'll show you how to finish off the cast on. So here we are. We just put our loop behind the last peg, snug it up, and then we just take the loop, put it over peg 1, and just snug that up, and then we can just knit that off, and that will secure our work. There we go, and I can take that off now. Okay, so then what we're going to do is we're going to do a few rows that is going to make this brim, or the beginning of the brim, look really, really nice and blend in with this chain cast on, so you won't see any loose loops anywhere, even if you had some, and it will just look really nice. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a row of owl eye, and what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to hide, whenever I have a row of owl eye near a cast on, I really like to work this into the brim so I don't have to weave it in later. And you don't have to do that, you can just weave this in later, but that's what I'm going to do. So it's here close to peg 2, so I'm going to come in and do my owl eye. So I'm just going to go over like that. Then I'm going to go behind peg 1, and then I go over peg 1 and 2. But I'm going to bring this with me over peg 2. So I'm just going to knit them off. There we go. And then I'm going to move this yarn that I'm blending in over here to peg 3. And then you're always at peg 1 with owl eye, and you go behind peg 1 and you wrap peg 1 and 2. And we're going to bring this one with us, and we're just going to wrap peg 1 and peg 2. And then I'm going to bring this around so it'll be on the next peg, and we're going to go, we're always on peg 1 when we're doing owl eye, so I'm going to go in front of peg 1, over peg 2, and I'm going to bring this piece of yarn with me. So basically, I'm not bringing it with me all the way because then it would get too thick and we would see it in the work, and I want to blend it in so you don't see it. So I'm just always putting it over the next peg, and then I'm going back and rewrapping with just the one piece, bringing it over, and just knitting it over. And then again, just putting it here. We're on peg 1. We go in front of peg 1, wrap peg 1 and 2, and that's where we meet up with this yarn that we're blending into the work. And we're always taking this one and knitting it over those two. And then that's probably enough, but I'm going to do it maybe another time. And then I'm just going to go behind peg 1, over peg 2, meeting up with the yarn, and just taking it over. And yeah, I think that's enough, so I'm just going to leave it there now. And here we are at peg 1. We're going to go behind peg 1, over peg 2, and just knit it over. We're on peg 1, we go behind peg 1, over peg 2, and knit it over. We're on peg 1, over peg 1 and 2, and knit it over. On peg 1, behind peg 1, over peg 2, and knit it over. We're on peg 1, behind peg 1, over peg 2, and knit it over. And that's all we do. Whatever peg we're on, we wrap it, the peg next to it, and knit it over. So we're just going to finish this row in owl eye stitch. And so I'm just going to meet you up right here for the next row. Okay, so I've just wrapped and landed here, and this is peg 1, and so I'm going to go behind peg 1, but I'm not going to go over peg 2, the new peg 1, because that's where we're starting our new row. So I'm just going to knit it off like this. That's really important when we're doing this, that we always have 2 stitches on each peg when we're doing an owl eye row, so that they're all the same. So what we're going to do now is a row of purl. So to do purl, we put the working yarn in the loop that's on peg 1. We scoop up the working yarn, and then we just slide it over the peg and put the loop back on and tighten it. So we're actually taking this loop, making a new loop with the working yarn, and then placing that loop on the peg and then tightening it. Scooping it up, bringing it over, and tightening it. So hook in, scooping up the working yarn, making the loop, and sliding it on. So that's all we do, and there's plenty of videos on YouTube if you need to look more at purling. But that's all we're going to do. So we're going to purl all the way around, and I'm going to meet you back here again, somewhere around that area, and we'll see you then. Okay, so here we are, and I'm going to purl this peg. We're almost done the row. And there we are. And then to start our next row, and our next row is going to be owl eye again. So we're going to do a row of owl eye, one more row of purl, and then we're done with what we're doing for casting on. And you can see that this is looking pretty interesting here. And you can't even see where this working yarn got hidden. It's all blended in. Now to do the owl eye, we have to start the stitch. So what we do is we come in front, wrap peg 1, and then we're at peg 1, wrap peg 1 and 2, and knit them off. And we always keep owl eye nice and loose. So wrap peg 1 in front of peg 1, over peg 2, and knit it off. Wrap peg 1, over peg 1 and 2, and knit it off. And so I also have a video on owl eye on YouTube, so if you want to look closer at how owl eye is, you can do that. So anyway, we're going to go around, and then another row of purl, and then I'll meet you up. So just to go over what we did, we cast it on, then we did a row of owl eye, and then a row of purl, and now we're doing another row of owl eye, then we'll do one more row of purl, and then we're meeting back here. So I'll see you then. Okay, so I just finished that row of purl, and now when we look at the brim, you can see that it looks really nice. I don't see any loose loops or anything here. So I can look at it later after we've done more. Okay, so now what we're going to do is the brim. So we're going to be E-wrapping, starting with these 2 pegs, and we're going to wrap them together, and we're going to E-wrap these 2 pegs together, then these 2 pegs together, then these 2 pegs together. And then we're going to alternate that. So we'll be wrapping these 2 pegs together, and these 2 pegs together, and these 2 pegs together. Okay, so we're going to start by wrapping peg 1 and 2 together, and we do that very loosely, and then we come behind here and we wrap peg 3 and 4 together. Go, and we come behind and wrap the next 2 together, and then behind and wrap the next 2 together, and behind and wrap the next 2 together. And then it's really important to keep this loose because this can really tighten up on you. So see, I've got it very loose. See that? So loose, you almost feel like it's going to fall off. That's what you want. And if you're not loose enough, you can take this and then just go back and loosen them up. Loosen it up more here. Loosen them up. You can go all the way and loosen them all up. So you can keep it loose. And if you're a tight knitter, that's fine, because you can knit the row and you can just go back and loosen it all up the way I showed you. And then don't knit it over until you've loosened it up. And you'll be able to do this stitch. It'll be very easy for you. And hopefully it'll help you to knit a little looser, because it'll sure be easier on your wrist and your hand. Because you can get carpal tunnel quite easily by knitting too tight for too long. Okay, so we've got these all wrapped. And then we're going to just knit them all over. But what I like to do is set up my next row, because it's really easy to get mixed up if you've had to put your work down or somebody interrupts you, or you know, life happens. So anyway, I'm going to knit over these 2 pegs. I'm going to knit over these 2 pegs, And then that's going to leave the next 2 peg pair that I'm going to wrap open. So I can just wrap these 2. Now if you were on an odd pegged loom, you ended up with 1 peg that didn't have a wrap on it. So when you do the next row, you're not going to be wrapping these 2 pegs. You're going to be wrapping the one that you couldn't wrap and peg 1. And then you'll be doing the same thing that we're doing. So that's the only difference. Okay, so we're going to just wrap this. This is the beginning of the next row after we knit those off, and I'm just going to hold it here. So I'm already set up for my next row. Now you may not have a loom that has a peg like that, so in that case you can just knit this one over, because that's where the working yarn's coming from. It'll hold the working yarn and hold this here, and then you'll recognize it because you'll only have one thing here because you've knitted it, but you'll have the 2 here, and you'll remember it's these 2. But you can mark it with something else, put an elastic band on it, any way you can think of marking. I just do this. And then I'm just going to go around and knit them off. So I'm going to put it on pause because I don't think you're learning much just watching me knit these off, and it's probably pretty darn boring. So we'll just put it on pause. Okay, all the pegs are knitted off, and we're ready to do the next row, and I've already got these wrapped and marked, so I'm just going to make sure it's nice and loose, and then I'm going to wrap the next 2 pegs together and the next 2 pegs together. And we're just going to take a look, because I'm going to show you it's easy to see if you forget and put your work down what you've wrapped and what you haven't. Because here, if you look, these 2 are wrapped together. You can see the yarn in there wrapping them together. And you can see these 2 are wrapped together, all that yarn in here, but this is empty right here, see? And here, this right here is empty right here, and here, these 2 are wrapped together right there. These 2 are wrapped together. So if you get mixed up, so if you look at what we're doing, we just wrapped these 2. Now we're going to go behind and wrap these 2, needed to be wrapped. And then these 2 that needed to be wrapped. So there you go. You will be able to tell. And it's a good idea when you're checking your row to see how loose it was, to make sure you've wrapped all the right pegs before you knit them off. That way you won't have to go back. So remember to loosen up. You pull this and then pull those all the way down. And I know I'm loose enough. I've done this stitch enough times that I think it actually helped teach me to control my tension and to be loose when I needed to be, which was really good for me. I can just whip up these things and I don't even feel like my hand has worked at all. Okay, so here we are. And then we're going to knit over this one, knit over this one, knit over this one, knit over this one, and knit over this one, because we're always wrapping either these 2 or these 2, or if you're doing the odd loom, then you know which ones you're wrapping. You're always wrapping these 2 or this one that is in this empty space and this one. Okay, but we want to set up for our next one again, and we're supposed to be wrapping these 2, and we are way over here with our working yarn. So that's a long way. If we were going to wrap like this, we would have this long string. So what we're going to do is move this working yarn behind this peg. So we could take this loop off, put it behind, and put this loop back on. Or the way that I like to do it is you set it up like you're going to do a purl, right? So you're down here. You put your hook here, put it into here, and scoop it up, just actually like the cast on we did. But now you don't pull anything off. You just put this over and pull, and you are behind the peg. So now when we go behind, you're only going past one peg to go to the peg pair. So it's evened it out, so your yarn here is going to be the same as the rest of this. So then we're just going to wrap it and secure it. Okay, and I'll show you that again at some point while we're making this, because I know it's harder to see it with the green yarn against the green peg, but it is going to turn to another color soon and be able to see better. Wish I'd had another loom free that wasn't green, but I didn't. So anyway, we're going to wrap peg 1 and 2. Oh, what am I doing? I got busy talking and got mixed up. Yes, we secured this, so I'm going to knit these off before we do anything else. So let's knit these off and keep our minds on what we're doing. And as you see, it's, well, you can't see very easy, but it's getting tighter to knit these over. So you really appreciate it if you've been really loose. And if you've been getting too tight, just start loosening it up and it'll loosen up again. But it should be nice and easy to knit it over. And I'm having no trouble knitting it over, but I can feel it tight. If you are actually going around and it suddenly feels really loose while you're knitting, you can bet you've wrapped it wrong. So don't keep going. Check and fix it before you get too far along, because it should feel tighter as you go, not loose. Okay, so here we are, and now we've wrapped peg 1 and 2 again, and then we're going to wrap the next 2 and the next 2, and we just keep going like that. So let's go a little ways and do a few rows, and I want to do a 2-inch brim. So when I measure it, it's 2 inches right from the beginning to where we're going to stop the brim, but you can do a shorter one or a longer one or whatever you like. I'm just going to pause and go for a while and just keep alternating the E-wrap, the 2 pegs like I've been showing you. And we'll catch up when my yarn's a better color, and I'll show you again what to do when the yarn is too far away. Okay, we'll meet up soon. Okay, so here we are, and look, our yarn has gotten some red. It's red and yellow now, so you're going to be able to see. So again, we're at the part where we have to come down here and wrap pegs 1 and 2, because as you can see, they weren't wrapped the last time before. And we've got a long ways to go. So we want to take this yarn and put it behind this peg. And of course you can just take this off and put the yarn behind the peg and put it back on. And that's just fine. But I wanted to show you this method because it's a lot easier if you ever have to do this a lot for some pattern that you're in. So you just put your working yarn into the loop. Scoop it up like you're doing a purl, just pop it over the top, and that will move it right behind the peg, right where we need it to be. And then we can come over here and wrap our peg 1 and 2, just like that. And we're starting to get a longer brim. It's about 1.5 inches. I want it to be closer to 2 inches for me. That's what I like. So I'll meet you up when I have a 2-inch brim and we're ready to start the body of the hat. Okay, I have my brim the length that I wanted, and here we are. And again, to get to the beginning peg to do something, we're a bit far back. So I'm going to pass this yarn behind to make it shorter and blend in just by doing that and flipping it over. And then I just have to go behind the 1 peg to get over here. So the pattern for Fleur is just an owl eye stitch, then an E-wrap in 2, an E-wrap in 2 alternating, and then repeat the owl eye again. So that's all it is. So you already know all the stitches to do it. and it's pretty easy to do. So to do the owl eye, we're just going to go over peg 1, knit it over peg 1 and 2, and keep it really loose. You're going to want to loosen up the work again after doing the E-wrap and 2-stitch, because it gets a little tight. And we're going to knit over peg 1 and 2. And we're just going to go around the loom doing the owl eye stitch. And we're going to do that all the way until we come here, and then we're going to do our E-wrap and 2, wrapping these two together all the way around the loom, knitting them off, then doing the alternating pair, or these two if you had the odd loom, and then do another row of owl eye, and then the alternating pegs, you know. So that's all it is. One row of owl eye, one row of E-wrap and 2, alternate your E-wrap and 2, and do another row, and owl eye, 3 rows, and you just repeat them. So let's go ahead and do that, and then we'll catch back up, and we're going to keep going until we have the length of hat we want less about 1/2 inch. And the 1/2 inch will be doing what we're going to do to bind off to get that nice unbulky kind of look to your bind off. So I like to have my hats about 9 inches long because I have a small head, and believe it or not, 9 inches on me is a slouchy hat. But for most women, you're going to find 9 inches is a beanie length. So if you want a beanie hat, 9 inches or longer, if you want to slouch it, 10 or 11 inches, or, you know, whatever is the length that you like for your hat, but deduct 1/2 inch. So I'm going to do 8.5 inches, and I measure it just like this. Put this here where the yarn is on the pegs, and go down and see there's where I have my 2 inches, and you're going to want to be able to go down to your 9. You'll just loosen it a little bit when you measure it, but don't stretch it. And so I'm going to go to 8.5. Okay, so I will meet you there when we've done the rows, and then I'll take you through how to do the bind off. Okay, so we've done all our rows, and I've gotten to 8.5. And here's how we're looking. We've got this brim here, and it's never going to roll on you or anything like that. It's going to be very nice and stable with this type of a loose knit. And there's our E-wrap and 2 there, and then here we are with our Fleur stitch. So now we're just going to be binding it off. So all we need to do now, well, the first thing we need to do is get the working yarn over here again. And we're on green again, but we're just going to take it, pull up the loop, put it over, and there we go. Come over here. And we're ready to wrap peg 1. So now all we're going to do is normal E-wrap. E-wrap 3 rows. That's just E-wrapping 1 peg, 1 more peg, 1 more peg. And we're just going to do 4 rows of this. So after we've done our 4 rows, I'll meet you up over here on peg 1. Okay, I've got my rows of E-wrap done. So all we're going to do now is reduce the amount of pegs that we have with yarn on them. So we're going to take the yarn off peg 1 and stretch it over and flip it over peg 2. There we go. And then we're just going to knit it off. Then we're going to go to the next peg, peg 3 here, take the working yarn off and slip it on to peg 2. And they're nice and loose because E-wrapping made it so they would be loose. And over and just knit it off. Over to the next peg, take the yarn, put it on the following peg and knit it off. And as you see, we just have a yarn on every second peg. And we can do this pretty fast actually. It'll take that long to reduce it, and it'll be really easy to string it up because we'll only have half the pegs. 18 pegs to be exact. Whoop. And there we are. We've done it. Then we're just going to take our working yarn and wrap it around one time and then a little bit more, up to 1.5, and just cut our yarn. And then we're going to find ourselves a needle. So I'll be right back when I get the needle. Okay, here's the needle, and I'm just going to thread it. Okay, oh, and it would, I should probably knit off the last piece. I was so glad to get there, I forgot to knit it off. Okay. So here we are, and we're just going to go over here and pick up the first, our working yarn's coming out of here. We're going to go over here and pick up the first one. Just like that. And put the needle under and pick up the next loop. And put the needle under and pick up the next loop. And that's all we're going to do, work our way around the loom, picking up the yarn. Getting exciting. We're almost done, and we're going to be able to see what the hat looks like. I think it's going to be a beautiful hat. Okay, so we've picked up the one that has the working yarn coming, had the working yarn coming out of it, and we're going to go back and pick up the first one that we picked up, and that's where we're going to leave it now. And now we can just flip off all the pegs. And everything's secure. So it was pretty easy hat to make. You did have to do different rows, but you're only using the E-wrap in 2 and the owl eye for most of the hat. I did a couple pearls for the brim, but quite amazing how mixing that E-wrap into with Owl Eye can produce all the different hats you're going to see me producing with those 2 stitches. And so anyway, we're just going to drawstring it up just a little bit here, making sure that yeah, it's looking nice like that. And then we're just going to put the working yarn through to the wrong side here, and we're going to tighten it up here on the wrong side. And right, a lot easier if I shorten this yarn, so I'm just going to shorten the yarn. I'm just going to drawstring this up now, and then I'm going to put my hands over so I'm holding it right here where I want to sew. There, come up here so you can see. And I'm just going to sew around in a kind of a circle to secure it. Okay, I've gone all around it, and so now I'm just going to tie a little knot. And I'm going to go around a couple more times. There we go, and then I'm just going to tie another little knot here. There. And then just going to check and make sure everything's looking really good on this side. And yes, it is. Nice cinched in and looking good here. And then if you want, you can just weave in this here and there. You can just weave in your yarn. I don't bother. I just cut it. It could always be woven in later if you decided to. And we already took care of the yarn in here, so we don't have to do that. So now we're just going to stretch our work. And then make sure we stretch the stitches out here. There we go. And there's our hat. So here's our hat, and there's our brim, and here's the stitch. Oh, it's looking really, really beautiful. I didn't think this yarn was quite as pretty as the other one, but it actually does. It is actually pretty. And then there's our reduced crown, so it's nice and soft, no big bulky kind of a thing there. And if you want to wear the slouchy, it has a nice drape to it. You want to wear it as a beanie, it will work that way too. So I hope you enjoyed making this. I will post the color, if you really like this color of yarn, of the James C. Brett on YouTube. And until we see you again, happy looming. Have lots of fun. I hope you'll find lots of projects you like with a stitch. And goodbye.